Hello Bots and Bits fans, here it is finally. You've asked for it a lot, almost daily. This is of course Toyhouse Factory, aka Kubinbao, THF01 Sonicwave with combinations. So anyway, straight into the details. The Toyhouse Factory box art is huge and impressive. There's some front, sides and back. Now there's an interesting story behind this box art. Toyhouse Factory actually nicked it off Deviantart. The artist, Paul Hill, was a little bit pissed at first, but the idea of his artwork being printed, boxed, and on an actual product was the ultimate silver lining, I think. Hearing about this, Todd Ferguson from Optimus Prime Collectors United and Ben from Toy Bento thought it'd be a pretty good idea just to send Paul one for free, and he looked pretty damn happy when it rocked up. Good on you guys, that's just fucking awesome. There are some really kick-ass and supportive fans out there. So make sure you go check out Paul's Deviantart page, Optimus Prime Collectors United group on Facebook, and of course toybento.com, and spread some love. Speaking of the box, here's what you get in it. The instruction manual, which shows the transformation of Soundwave, his accessories, and all the tapes. Also in the box, we get his silver hand sensor, which isn't the best. The silver on the front is quite lumpy. I've got scratches and dirt in this bottom bit here, and a few scratches and sprue marks on the top. And where they've joined the two pieces together, in there, I don't know if you can see it, huge crack right through the plastic. And it's starting to crack a little bit in the same spot on this side. But with this thing, I'll probably never ever look at it again. So, also a die-cast metal Megatron gun, which is quite unique. It's only the silver bit that is die-cast. This handle and grip are still all plastic. The scope is still plastic, and so is the silencer. It has a bit of weight to it, so I wonder if he can even still hold it. Go on, get in. Yes and no. While he can hold it fine, his elbow joint does have a bit of trouble holding the weight, which we'll cover a little bit later. There's also his battery blaster, which is a candy blue colour. It's a dark blue with a metallic speckle through it, which is unique. It's kind of cool, something a bit different. Unfortunately, the plastic is a little bit messy. We've got some sort of weird rectangle scuff marks down here. The join isn't the greatest, and also, while the sprue marks have been tidied up, you can see there's a bit of an indentation. They're still pretty prominent. Transformation of the battery is still the same, albeit a little bit stiff. I always have trouble getting this bloody handle out. And then the chrome nozzle is just that little bit too far in, so just gotta coax it out. The details on the gun, the red is applied pretty well. There's no spots, no missing bits. It's a very bright red, especially in comparison to the KO one I just did a review of. That was quite faint. This is much brighter. The chrome is well done. There's no hairs, there's no scratches, no nothing. You know, it's evenly applied. Maybe a little bit thick, but still looks good. And Soundwave can hold it just fine. That tabs in really firmly, and as you can see, it's not flopping out at all. The last KO, while he could hold the gun, he couldn't hold it like that. The connection just was nowhere near as firm. And we also have his clip-on grid plate thing. A lot of people thought from promo shots that this came permanently attached. That's not the case, as you can see. It comes attached in the box, but you know, it just pops off. For argument's sake, it does clip on pretty well. It's not falling off or anything. The gold paint is a little bit rubbish. It's chipped all the way along here, and you can see the clear plastic underneath. Around the top is fine, but just this whole section here is completely chipped. And of course, last accessory is his Energon cube, which, you know, there's no defects on it. Clips on just fine. Oh, maybe not. Sorry to you guys with loudspeakers and sensitive headphones. I just realised that my studio light was too close to the microphone and was sending some buzzing down the line. I'm pretty sure I've fixed it now, so let's hope. Alright, so let's take a look at some of these tapes. Now, to just quell any argument or debate, I'm going to call this guy Rumble Frenzy and Frenzy Rumble. Now, I'm going to be comparing with the Hasbro equivalents, and I'm going to leave the cannons on the back of the Hasbros just as an indicator of which is which. Now I'm not going to transform them to tape and back. There's just too many and I can't be bothered. But I will show you the tape details on the back, and you can see that they are done really, really well. The blues and the silvers, it's all applied. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's all applied really well, and the same on the inside of the legs. So tape mode looks good, and as it's meant to. And because I'm not transforming them back and forth, I will just say I transformed every single tape, all 6 of them, and I didn't have an issue transforming any of them. Nothing broke. They all performed as they were meant to. So straight away you can see there are some substantial colour differences. Rumble Frenzy has more of a deeper purple colour to his head, his forearms, his shins, all that sort of stuff compared to the Hasbro. And also some of the leg details are a little bit different. The shins, the yellow sections are much wider than the Hasbro. The paint is applied pretty badly to the shins. The chrome is just as bad. You see the chrome on like his pec areas. It's all chipped. There are fingerprints in it. Bits missing. It's lumpy. It's not very good. And as you saw before, his legs are just really, really floppy. Look, it's just. Whereas the Hasbro, you know, it's strong as. With that being said, the arms are really stiff and strong. The elbows are pretty good. It's the same on both sides. All of these joins in here are as you would expect. Same with like the hips. See, look. The hips are good. Same with the ball socket in there. That's just as good. It's just these knee pins. And it's both of them. They're just they're not very good. I don't like this. I think this is shitty. Now, Frenzy Rumble is a little bit better. The gold on the chest is applied to a much higher standard. Same with the crotch area. There's no scratching or lumpiness or anything. A little bit of chipping in the gold on the knees, but, you know, it's very, very minor. The blue paint on the shins is applied pretty well, although, you know, the details are still a bit more simplified. And as you can see, the red plastic, it's a much more vibrant, brighter red, and the plastic looks a little bit thinner, maybe not as dense. You sort of see some light sort of coming through it, whereas this plastic is much more solid. He also has the same, hang on, he also has the same torso issue. See the gap? And you push it back in, give it a yank out, and you can, so you can't get one side to, one side will go flat and the other side pops up, and you just forever have that gap. The arms and the shoulders, all those joints are as stiff as Hasbro as you would expect them. This leg is fine. Look, that knee is really good. This knee, yeah, see, it's still, that knee's rubbish. But because he's got one good leg, it means you can still get him in some pretty good dynamic poses because he's got this support of this leg. And then on to Ravage. That's Hasbro. That's Toyhouse Factory. Now, why is he on his back? It's because his front leg is just so damn floppy. And this elbow, shoulder joint, sorry, it's just, these joints aren't any good. Oh, he stands. That's the right on camera. I've never been able to get him to stand properly, but he looks like he's being a little bit cautious. Now that I've got him standing, I don't want to touch him, so we'll talk about the paint. The grey paint on him, on his legs, is much more glossier and thicker than the Hasbro, so it's got a few chips out of the box. Nothing too drastic. There's no overspray or anything like that, as you can see. The silver done on the arse rockets isn't too bad. It's a little bit chunky, but all the details covered. And speaking of detail, you might notice that they've simplified the arse rockets compared to the Hasbro. So the Hasbro has a lot more detail in it than the Toyhouse Factory does. Another one, the eyes are much brighter red on the Toyhouse Factory, which I really like. So you can actually see the eyes. You don't have to squint right in and have a good look. Right, so you can barely see that. And of course, the Toyhouse Factory has no Decepticon logos. Now, another detail that's missing, or maybe it broke off or got snapped, or I don't know, but it looks like they've removed his nose from the Toyhouse Factory when compared to the Hasbro. Hasbro has a very prominent nose sticking out. See that? But when we go back to the Toyhouse Factory, there's no nose on the end. There's the spot where it transforms, but there's no actual nose sticking out. And one last detail, let's just get rid of the Hasbro. The silver for the tape mode, you know, it's applied pretty well. I'm not going to show tape mode because I can't be bothered, but you know, you can see the silver on there. Open the legs up. So it's all applied reasonably well. A few scratches in there, but you know, it doesn't matter that much. That leg though, look at that. I think you can stay like that. So this is an interesting one. Onto the rat bat. I don't have an official rat bat, but I do have the KO that's been floating around on eBay for a couple of years. The one that's about 15-20 bucks. It wasn't pretty, but it got the job done. Having them side by side like this, I'd never noticed before that the Toyhouse Factory one is actually bigger than the KO. I'm not sure if the KO is the same size as the Takara official. I don't have it, so I can't compare. But there is like a 10 to 15% size difference between the two. But even though it's slightly different in size, it still will fit into the chests of the KO, Toyhouse Factory obviously, and the Takara. The KO, it's a bit snug, but it does work on the KO. And then on Takara, there we go. Doesn't really want to go in, but it does, and the eject still works to some extent. No, it doesn't. Get out. So, not the best inside the Takara. So the paint and details on the Toyhouse Factory version, they're okay. The black on the chest and around like the, I would say, hip area, while not the best, is still applied reasonably well, and the silver tape details are done really well as well. The red on the eyes and the deep purple in the ears, you can barely see it. You can hardly see anything. There's no black nose, but the mouth area is still painted pretty well. And the gold on the back is similar to the official, but a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more gold color in it, which I really like. I like the look of what they've done with that backpack. All of the joints are really stiff. You know, he can hold a pose pretty well. I forgot to mention that his feet, they clip onto all the holding points on the KO and the Takara. But then when we move over and look at the Takara KO that you get off eBay, this one's a little bit more messed up. See, I've got black paint all over the, I'll say, crutch area. The black on the chest is done a little bit better. It's a little bit thicker. I can see the purple a bit better in his ears as well, but his nose is painted on the side of his cheek, and you still can't really see his eyes. The silver details also had a lot of scratching straight out of the box, or out of the Ziploc bag that he came in. The gold on the back is sort of like a muted gold, more of a faded powdery gold. It's coming up a little bit vibrant on here because of the lights, but side by side with Toyhouse Factory, you can see that Toyhouse Factory is a more vibrant, deeper gold than the old KO. Right, and then onto Buzzsaw. Now this is the Hasbro on the right, and as you can probably tell already, it is a slightly, well, not slightly, it is a very different colour. The Toyhouse Factory is an orange colour compared to the bright yellow of Buzzsaw. Also, the orange details inside the wings are very slightly out of alignment. So I can just get in there and focus. There we go. So you can see the orange is out of alignment on all the panels. But, you know, it's still well done. There's no chips or dirt in them. And the silver paint is shinier than Hasbro, but the consistency is well done. I'm not seeing any chips or scratches or dents or anything, so it's applied well. Same with the tape details underneath. It shares the same orange color as the rest of its body, but there are no scratches or defects or anything, so it's pretty consistent. Where it isn't consistent is the face. See, there are a lot of paint errors in the face and the head. Just a bit of yellow on the side here. The beak's missing paint. You know, yellow and black isn't an easy thing to do, but they haven't done it well. Alright, so onto Laserbeak now, and this time I have Takara on the right, not Hasbro, and Toyhouse Factory on the left. The colour wise, the Toyhouse Factory red is a little bit more brighter than Takara. Like with Buzzsaw, the silver is more reflective on Toyhouse Factory. and applied pretty consistently, so I'm pretty happy with that. Again, the colour inside the panels on the wing, out of alignment on all the panels, but still the paint is pretty well applied. Underneath, the tape details are well printed or painted, or however they do it. The pins in the feet on this one are really well done. They're not coming loose or anything, not like the previous KO, which has pretty terrible paint, I must say. Let's just get the Takara out of the way for a sec. So there's the Toyhouse Factory and the KO. So if you remember from my last video, he's got a busted leg straight out of the box. The silver paint was not very good at all. There's chips and like brush strokes and stuff everywhere. It wasn't the greatest. So comparing these two, Toyhouse Factory wins easy. Just look at them together. You can see the paint and finish differences. In hand you can anyway, even with the tape detail. The Toyhouse Factory one just looks a lot better, and this transforms a lot better. This just feels much better than the KO, so I'd say buy the Toyhouse Factory one over the KO when it comes to Laserbeak at least. And finally onto Soundwave himself. Now as a whole, the Toyhouse Factory version does look quite impressive and striking, but it's not until you get a little bit closer that you see some of the shortcuts and errors that they've made. The first one we'll take a look at is what they've done with the head. Now as you can see, they've used that blue speckled plastic throughout, and it does look good, and they've used a different silver on the face compared to the Takara and the KO, but I do have a little speck of dirt just in the cheek section there that I can't remove, or it's going to leave a big gap in the silver paint. And one of the errors that they've made is in the factory, they've over screwed the back of the head and threaded everything inside. I'm not sure if that's focusing or not. There we go. And so what that has done is it's meant that it can no longer look down. So if I push it, it just wants to spring back up. Up is fine, it will hold up, but down it just flicks it straight back into neutral. Because it's all just way too tight, it's done something to the torque inside the neck connection there. So yeah. And while I've got it that close, I'll just point out that a lot of the details on the Toyhouse Factory are simplified. So when you compare two heads, so this is Toyhouse Factory on the right, Takara on the left. You can see the details down the sides of this center rectangle section compared to Takara. There's a lot more detail in the back of the Takara than there is on the Toyhouse Factory. But on the plus side, this custom visor just looks absolutely fantastic. Look at that. It looks like an actual jewel, or it's got glass or something. They've added like a polish or a glaze to it, which gives it a real 3D effect. And I just absolutely dig that. Even if I don't keep this figure, I think I'm going to pull that visor out and put it on my Takara. Even comparing it to the Takara on the left here, which is actual clear plastic, it doesn't have the same effect as the Toyhouse Factory does. And in case you're curious, the KO also has clear plastic like Takara. Now the articulation on the shoulders is pretty damn good. The joints are very tight, so we'll do the upper shoulders first. See, that is really strong. And then the secondary shoulder joint, this one is really tight. Yeah, so that one's a little bit loose, but still the stiffness is pretty good. Same with the upper biceps. This one is stiffer than this one, but they're both quite reasonable. Now when it comes to the elbows, the double joints, the upper joints on both are really stiff as you would want them. It's the secondary joints, let me just bring them out, that are a problem. Now you saw earlier in the video he had trouble holding the weight of Megatron's gun. There really is not much holding that up. It will hold the pose, but the slightest flick or any weight and it's going to drop. It's the same on both sides. And also the wrist swivel, there really is not much holding that in place. As you can see, it won't flop, you know, it's not flopping about, but it's really simple to move. So like you saw the Megatron gun, a little bit of weight in that hand and it will tilt. Now paint wise on the arms, it's not too bad. The paint applied to the shoulder areas here isn't the greatest, and the detail has also been simplified. See, the silver, it's applied flatly enough, but the edges are really fuzzy, and that red doesn't look too great. And comparing the details with the Takara, you can see how simplified the shoulder detail has been. But moving down the arms, it's pretty similar both sides. The Takara has KFC hands, in case you're wondering. Now the paint quality in the silver here, it's applied quite well, but I do have a couple of scuffs, like I got a scratch there. Where else? It's a little bit rough where the plastic joins together, and you can see some of the powderiness coming out in this silver, and they've simplified the shoulder details a bit, but it is miles better than the KO. As you can see, look at that. Look how spotty and sparse the KO is compared to Toyhouse Factory. Toyhouse Factory have put a lot more effort into their silver application, and the other arm is of a similar quality. As you can see, there are some scuffs. Let me just straighten this up. I've got like a scuff there, a little bit of a mark there. I don't know if you can see that. The joint on the side of this arm is rough still, but the application on the actual arm itself is good. Sprue mark at the top of the elbow, and on the back it's applied quite well. It's a little bit, don't worry about that, it was just my phone going off. It's a little bit lumpy there, but overall it's done really well. And while I've got them in the back, take a quick look at the silver detail on the back. Now the paint's applied pretty well, but you can see that it's also applied really thickly, and it looks like it might chip off at any second. Actually, let's just give it a good scratch and see if anything comes off. See any chips? No? Okay, I'm calling that well applied. When comparing the silver back details to the Takara and the KO, however, you can see that the sort of machinery work in here, it's not as deep, it's not as far recessed in as the Takara is. These circular bits on the Takara are much smaller, and you've got much longer line work up the top here, and you've got more detail in these little connectors and that. When you compare it to the back work here, see? It's much more simpler, everything's a bit fatter and not as deep. Now, while on the back of the Toyhouse Factory, I will point out the new butt flap that they've invented. The way that this works is it's just this little additional piece that pegs in underneath the battery cover. Now the pin joints on this are really, really stiff. It's just a simple little click mechanism just in there. And you do feel like that plastic is going to break. It doesn't. I don't even have a single stress mark, despite how tight it is, but you do worry anyway. Now when you're putting this back on, I thought it went in where the screw holes were, but no, there's just two tiny peg holes just directly underneath the battery pack, and it goes the blunt side up like this. Jam that in. It clips underneath the button for the spring mechanism inside the cassette holder, and then just clamp them around like that. And it works really well. You would think that it was 100% part of it, always, but not an addition made by the KO company. Now unfortunately, if you're hoping to add this butt flap to the Takara or your KO, it's impossible, because the peg holes underneath the battery cover are custom, and the Takara does not have them. So onto Soundwave's torso area now. His waist swivel is stiff enough. It's what you would expect, no complaints. When it comes to the painted detail on the cassette holder and these little gold wings on the side, it's not the greatest. So straight away you can see that the gold border is both darker than the KO and the Takara, but the gold wings on the side are a different colour to the frame, and they're not done very well at all. None of this gold is up to standard. So you see the gold wings on the side, they've got chips, they've got brush strokes, you've got blue plastic showing straight through it. It's not the greatest at all. Now the gold around the cassette holder, down the bottom here, that looks really sharp and crisp, but up the top you've got a lot of spotting, a lot of errors. I can see the plastic coming through the paint, and down here is just really fuzzy. Now something I do like that they've done with the cassette is they've removed all the circuitry or Cybertronian writing. When you look at the KO's cassette, it's got this overemphasized circuitry down here, and it actually looks messy. You zoom out, when you're looking at it on a shelf, it looks like there's gunk in the plastic. The Takara has it, but it's very subtle. See in the corners, it's just very subtle little circuitry. I don't know why the KO went for a much more in-your-face kind of messiness, but Toyhouse Factory have removed it completely, which I'm a fan of. Also, obviously, they've removed the Decepticon logo, which I'm not too worried about, because I have a lot of these from Yes Model, the dry rub logos, which I'm going to apply on this one, and I prefer this wider Decepticon logo than the tall skinny that they've used on both of these. And also the application of that on the KO was really messy. See, I got all paint splattered up there. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. In fact, I think I'll just do it right now. Let's just go for the biggest one. Yeah, how does that look? Yes, I'm not 100% sure if I like that or not, but it's not a big deal. Right, so moving down to the hip area, you can see that the chrome on the buttons is a much more reflective chrome than on the KO. And the details are quite sharp on that. And I'm not seeing any chipping or paint errors, except when you shine the light in a certain way, you can see that the paint is sort of bunched up just at the bottom of this button. See that? Just a little lump right there, but apart from that, it seems near perfect. The word play is still really well done, especially the middle of the A. Comparing to the KO, whose details I didn't really like very much. The chrome was applied really thickly, although there's no bunching or pooling or dirt or scratches or anything. It's just not as sharp. Moving on to the Takara, you can see that they've gone for a different kind of chrome. It's not as reflective, it's still got more of a silver to it, and it is the sharpest detail of the three. See the word play and the buttons, there's just, there's no rounding, there's no nothing, it's really sharp. Now when checking the hips, I'm not going to include the KO because they're ratcheted. I'm just going to compare them with the Takara. So still have the upper thigh swivel, and these are all friction joints, which I'm happy that they've put friction joints on, because they worked on Takara, they'll work here if they're done right, and they're done okay. So, it's a nasty sound going out. It holds the weight, but you give it a little bit of a flick, they do go down. And see, there's no bounce whatsoever, unfortunately. No partying for this one. Now the front ratchets in the hips, like the outward motion, they do hold the weight of the feet, but a couple of shakes and they give. The knees are the same. Bend the knees, give it a flick. Alright, they're holding much better. And you've got the upper knee swivel, which is just as strong and just as stiff as you would expect. And the feet, these aren't ratcheted, this is all still friction, but that is still a stiff joint. Same with the toe. See, it's not floppy at all, none of that is floppy. And the other side, that's a little bit looser. Now joint strength compared to the Takara, so we'll go out with the Takara. That was actually pretty bad. I'll try it again. Yeah, okay, so Toyhouse Factory beats it there. Let's go with the front ratchets. Well, the front ratchets hold, but the knees didn't. So let's bring the knees back on Takara. Toyhouse Factory does better knees. And we got the friction here, and that is really stiff, that toe. Same on this side. So Toyhouse Factory, they've got stronger outward motion and stronger knees, so well done. So the paint on the thighs is pretty well done. The silver is much brighter than Takara, but not as reflective as the KO, and it's near perfect. I do have a couple of blemishes there, but really not that much. The kneecaps, on the other hand, are a bit more messed up. There's a bit more chunkiness and scratches and stuff in there. Also, you'll notice that the Toyhouse Factory has deleted some more detail from the legs. The Takara and the KO have some more edge work down the side here. See this edge work? Just down here? They've deleted that from the Toyhouse Factory version. Also, the silver on the Toyhouse Factory, as we turn it around on the back, that is near perfect. Maybe a slight blemish up here near the screw hole, but apart from that, really nicely done. Further down, you can see that the paint sort of remains consistent with the rest of it. The silver here, it's applied really well. See, there's not too much powderiness to it. There's no overspray, there's no chipping or anything. The gold underneath the kneecaps is done pretty well, but inside the shins, not so much. Let me just turn that out. It's to the same standard as the gold up around the tape deck, so at least it will match, but it still doesn't look that great. And the silver here on the inside of the leg, you see I have some scratching and some sort of scuffs. Same on the other side. It is, however, better, much better than the KO, which, while no scuffing, is really powdery and is quite inconsistent. And while I've got them like this, you can see that the Toyhouse Factory Blue is a different shade to the KO and the Takara. They've also removed the red plastic in the recording button, and they've removed the wording. On the back of the legs, you can see they've still got the dials and switches that are both movable, I think. Yep, bit tight but movable. Paintwork on the back here is a little bit more inconsistent, and it's not the greatest. Even though the KO silver on the back here is really powdery, it's powdery throughout. It's consistent in its shittiness, whereas on this one, colours are slightly different between the panels. You can see down here they've cut a sprue mark off of the back of the leg and they've touched it up by hand. It hasn't quite matched. And while I'm here, you can see that the details on the back of the thighs are a little bit different. They've deleted some of the line work. This is the KO. See, they've deleted this line work and just made it much more even, and they're not as deep like the rest of the details. All the detailing on the Toyhouse Factory are very shallow compared to both the KO and the Takara. Now, if you're hoping to put KFC hands on the Toyhouse Factory, I think you're going to be out of luck. There's just too much of a colour difference between the two. If you've bought Toyhouse Factory, you're just stuck with the default hands, which aren't too bad. They're stiff enough, and the finger, they've improved that joint. That's not coming off. Now, I really can't be bothered going through the transformation of Soundwave, but I will demonstrate how the new butt flap works in tape mode. Right, so there he is in tape mode. Now, I will say straight away that he doesn't hold and tab in together as well as the KO or the Takara, but he does still hold his shape on his own. Just see, it comes apart. This side's not coming off, but that side comes off pretty easily, and I couldn't get these thighs straight no matter what I did. It's just a friction joint. You wouldn't think it would be such a problem, but it was. And the other problem, like with the KO, the forearms, this tab in here, that tab hole is just too big, and I think it's because this cover just moves too much. So you got to tab it in, and you think it's in, but it's not. It's just sitting there. Same with the other side. It's just sitting on it. Now, when it comes to the butt flap and transformation, you need it sticking out like this for the whole transformation, because these batteries won't clear it. But once that is all done, you just need to fold it down like that, and then just snap these bits out. It doesn't tab into anything, it just sort of sits there loose. So it was a good idea, but they could have done these bloody forearms. It's a good idea, but they could have done a bit more for it. So it looks alright. It looks good enough. It's a nice little addition, but I wouldn't call it a game changer, or I wouldn't call it a reason for buying this over something else, but it is a bit different. And one last thing before I forget, the tape mechanism does work, as well as the ejector on, where's the button? So 2 levels, and it's very clean, it's not getting jammed. Yeah, works as intended. So the final question, should you buy it? Well, it's about the $125 mark with all the tapes, and the quality, I'm not going to say it's really good, but it's decent, you know. Probably won't be disappointed for what you've spent. KO is about the $85 mark, and I don't know about yours, Mine is garbage. I hate this thing. It was not money well spent whatsoever. I'm only holding on to it, waiting for the Robot Heroes version to come out in the end of June, I think. And then, I don't know what I'll do with it. I don't know. Make some suggestions down below what I should do with this rubbish thing. My Takara trumps all of these. My Takara is still better than all of them. This is one of the first ones from like 6 or 7 years ago, I think, before their quality went to shit. It cost me about $200 from TF Direct, I think, and I'm really happy with it. This is perfect for me. My Takara is perfect. I love it. I can't speak for the reissue, which, from what I'm told, is just a piece of shit. So I'm not going to recommend Takara over this because the reissue sucks, apparently. I don't have one, just from what I've heard and been told. If you spend $125 on this, you're going to be pretty happy with it, I think. Or wait a little bit longer for Robot Heroes, who were coming out, I think I said the end of June. They're still revising their mold a bit. They're trying to make some more improvements. They've pushed it back a bit to make more improvements. So I'm really, really excited to see what they bring to the table. They also have their own custom line of Decepticon tapes coming out that they've designed themselves. So they're really taking Soundwave seriously, Robot Heroes. So I'm going to hang on to all these until Robot Heroes comes out, and we're going to do one big bash. But if you've ordered this guy, you're going to be happy, as long as you didn't pay too much. As always, if you have any comments, questions, love or corrections, please leave them below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Remember to check out my Facebook for daily updates on third party and KO news. And as always, thank you very much for watching.